Good. Senator Paul.
You know, I started and we mentioned, you know, some of the abuses from past FEMA expenses, but I thought it'd be good to go through a few more. Mr. Manning, have you read Senator Coburn's report?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Well, here's one. This is Montcalm County. This isn't from his report. It says the United States is fighting terrorism one snow cone at a time. The West Michigan Shoreline Regional Development Commission, with a grant from FEMA, bought 13 snow cone machines valued at $11,700. That would embarrass me if I were in charge of any of this money, and I would want to respond and do something about that. I think most people saw this when this was in the news, the Halo Counterterrorism Summit in 2012 in San Diego with the zombie apocalypse demonstration. 40 actors dressed as zombies did some kind of simulated terrorism thing. The cost, I think, was offset by grant money from FEMA. That, I think, would embarrass me also if I were in charge of any of this money. But I would want to know something had been done about it. We're buying all these armored vehicles, and, you know, there probably is a need for an armored vehicle maybe in New York City or Washington, D.C. or somewhere, but in Keene, New Hampshire, there's been 2 murders in the last 15 years. We bought a $285,000 armored vehicle. I'm sure that even the people in Keene thought that was kind of ridiculous. Let's see. Montgomery County, Texas, got a $300,000 Shadowhawk drone with UASI dollars. I'd be a little concerned about not only the expense of it, but what are our rules with regard to how that drone's being used. See, some people have interpreted this open spaces doctrine to mean you can fly a drone anywhere. There's a lot of open spaces in Kentucky and Alaska, and I think you do deserve some privacy even when you're out hunting, sledding, whatever you're doing. I think really we should be going to a court and saying, we think this person is committing a crime. Will you give us a warrant to look at them? But we shouldn't just be flying these. The whole government from top to bottom is buying these drones. I mean, it's outrageous. EPA's got them. They're flying them everywhere. But if you think someone's a polluter and they're a farmer, go after them. But let's get a warrant. You know, we just can't be funding this. And plus, it just gets so large and this money's not accountable. It's just flowing everywhere. Snow cone machines, drones, long-range acoustic devices. They bought one in Pittsburgh for $88,000. Apparently can cause permanent hearing loss, but it's this ear-splitting noise. And it's like, we've got to have $90,000 for a ear-splitting noise device. See, I just wonder how the controls are, but some of it's just because nobody's paying attention to the dollars spent. We're $1 trillion in debt every year, and we should do some things. I mean, we had 9/11, we had this terrible thing happen, but, you know, we have a terrorism center, I think anti-terrorism center in Somerset, Kentucky. I figure if the terrorists get to Somerset, Kentucky, we're probably done for if they get that far. But, you know, we do these things because they're work projects and communities like them because they bring money instead of saying, where do terrorists attack us, you know? It's sort of like who attacked us on 9/11? 16 to 19 were here on student visas. So we had a special program looking at student visas for 10 years, and we just defunded that. So we got money for ear-splitting devices and for snow cone machines, but we didn't have enough money to look at people here on student visas. We apparently don't have enough analysts to look and see when you're targeted, when a foreign government like Russia reports you, like the Snarf brothers, to know that you're flying back to a part of the world where you may become radicalized. So I think we empty our pockets spending money everywhere, but then the things we ought to be doing we're not doing, and things we ought not to be doing we're doing. But I think it's really because of the overall philosophy of just throwing money at problems. And I'd appreciate if there have been any reforms Mr. Manning done since the zombie apocalypse, and maybe on the snow cone machines and anything else.
Thank you, Senator. Yes, we've done, as you can imagine, a very close analysis of all of the examples raised in the report and many that we hear.
If you have a response, formal response, I wouldn't mind seeing that if you can send that to our office.
Sure, we do, and we will be happy to provide it to your office as well. There are usually, as you would imagine, answers, reasons for those. The ice machines were well, intended for exactly that. As anybody who's been hospitalized will probably recall that they're often given ice chips when they're recovering rather than water, and the idea was to shaved ice in large quantities for heat response. But nonetheless, we have processes in place to scrutinize both the equipment that's being purchased, but more importantly, what we have in place as a grant program now and what we propose going forward would eliminate those kind of acquisitions, because we're talking about defined capabilities, a particular number of individuals with training in certain equipment that's defined as a typed resource to be able to achieve, and much less of the kind of more vague, this is something I think might be useful, so I'm just going to go ahead and do it, as we might have seen in the past.
But I'm not sure why we send any money to these cities. Why do we send money for terrorism to little tiny cities around the country? I come from a little town. I'm all for little towns, but I'm not for sending anti-terrorism grants to any little cities. I mean, New York is a problem. D.C. is a problem. L.A. is probably a problem. But by sending them to all these little cities, it sort of seems to me as if somehow politicians got involved. You know, I think there was a report a few years ago that said, I think this was in Indiana, there were like 9,000 requests for preparedness grants, the pumpkin factory, the popcorn festival, all of these, you know, cute little things that my family goes to in a small town, but they don't need terrorism grants. Someone should just say no.
Well, Senator, when in the case of small communities, it's often capabilities procured by the state through local governments. And the idea is that you build response capabilities. There's prevention and interdiction of an attack that may occur somewhere, but you build the response often in the outlying areas to come in as mutual aid. And in the case of the Snowcone machines, for example, if I recall correctly, that was in the Detroit area, and Abdullah Matab, had that device not failed, that aircraft would have blown up over Detroit. And
the Snowcone machine was going to save anybody?
The Snowcone machine, as I described, Senator, all of the was to build capability for their mass casualty response to be able to have shaved ice available. And of course, as we all know and have seen reports, it was used for other purposes. And we have procedures in place to prohibit that from happening again. The Bearcats are another good example of the armored vehicles. I think we all saw the utility in the Boston area. And as I described, the idea is to build statewide capability on the part of the state that can come together as a statewide response to wherever a threat may occur. And we do know that Zazi, the Times Square bomber, was building his bombs and planning in kind of remote exurban Denver and transited most of the United States en route to New York. So our grant program going forward has a what we propose is a more constraint on capabilities developed against specific identified threats and hazards that we have all worked jointly on identifying.
Mr. Manning, can I ask you a question? Would you mind submitting this, and then we'll end this panel here, but would you mind submitting, I think the point, I think Senator Paul is making is, how are these expenditures managed? What are really the capabilities and needs? But you're also indicating that you have a newer approach to how you're dealing with the grants in the future. I'd be very interested if you could do this. I'm very visual. One thing about the Senate, we love to create mills of paper with a lot of writing. What I like is, can you show how the grant program existed before, what it looks like in the future, in just a very simple chart style? In other words, here's what it could be used for. These are some examples, and here's what now is happening that will prevent that or not, depending on what the subject matter is. Is that something you could do? And it doesn't need to be complicated. And when I say this, I always like to say this, because I know federal agencies love to just, inundate us with paper because they figure that's how we'll get blurry-eyed and forget. But I just want something very simple that says, here's our current program, here's what we're moving to. And that I think would be a very interesting point to see, because that would help us understand how you've kind of plugged these problem areas that have occurred. And would that be within reason?
Most definitely.
Great. For the two others, if I can ask you to do one of the things, and it just dawned on me as you were talking, and we probably don't do enough of this, and it's something I'm trying to do with this committee and this another committee that I chair, and that's better oversight, not just when something bad happens, but, you know, can you submit, you have done your most, not the ones that we have right now, but even you had mentioned you did a report a couple years ago with some legislative. Can you submit to the committee, here's what we recommended, maybe even the last two reports, and what we've done? You know, and again, I don't need a big fancy document. I just need, here's the recommendation, completed, partially completed, not completed. What's your analysis of why? Because one of the things we don't do here, it's just dawned on me even more and more after 5 years now sitting here. We have great professional staff from the IG and your group, GAO, doing all this work. And then 3 years later, you know, since I've been here, 60% of the Senate has changed. And so, of course, we all come in with new ideas, and we say, why haven't you done this? And you actually politely say, as you did, and it was very good, well, 2 years ago, we did this. And then all of us say, well, we never saw it because, of course, we were new. And this might give us a better understanding of what we should be doing or not doing. And when there are recommendations, what's our follow-up to make sure that's done? Because otherwise, we send lots of times in committee meetings, having committee meetings about something we talked about a year and a half ago, and you all are the agency folks are, I know what you'll do. You'll, no disrespect, you'll leave and you'll go, we told them this 2 years ago. Well, help us do a better job in oversight. And so if you wouldn't mind doing that, and you select, I mean, I would say the last report, sure, or the last two, whatever you feel is more relevant, because if it's 10 years old, it may be, you know, times have changed quite a bit, but something that just says, here's what we recommended, here's what happened, and even if you can show what agency or us, you know, the elected body, was supposed to be doing something. Would that be okay?
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you all very much. I appreciate your time, and thank you for being at the panel here. We do have another panel that's, if they're ready, we'll do a little switch out here.